Right guys, welcome back to the channel, and you may have seen, if you follow me on Facebook a while back, Phil actually got me Asdrubael Vect for my birthday, so massive thank you to Phil for getting me a fantastic Dark Artisan model. I didn't get this model unfortunately when I used to play back in 3rd edition, but having it is phenomenal. Now of course there is no rules for Asdrubael Vect. So I've gone back to the 5th edition and the 3rd edition codex, read the rules, compared things to 8th edition as it stands at the moment, and tried to put together a few bits and pieces and make up some rules. Of course, this will only be for narrative play and with opponent's consent, but when I get the model painted up, you can expect to see it using, potentially, the rules that I have made, which I'm now going to follow. Okay, so here we go. This is Asdrubael Vect, and what I've done is I've basically looked at an Archon, improved them a little bit, looked at the Warlord trait and the relic for Cabal of the Black Heart. I've also looked at the old rules for Asdrubael Vect as well. So, of course, as he is Asdrubael Vect, I haven't put this on the description, but he is unique as well, so obviously he's the only character. I think I probably need to add a rule as well that if he is in your army, he must be the Warlord, no questions about it. As a result, he does have a default Warlord trait and default built-in relic, which essentially are the Cabal of the Black Heart ones, which we'll get to. But movement 8, weapon skill 2, ballistic skill 2, strength and toughness 3, 6 wounds, 6 attacks, leadership 10. So I believe that's 1 more wound, 1 more attack, 1 more leadership, and a 4+ save. Asdrubael Vect is a single model arm with a splitter pistol, plasma grenades, ghost plate armor, obsidian orbs, and scepter of the Dark City. So splitter pistol as standard, plasma grenades as standard, obsidian orbs. Now this is a little bit different. A few people in the Dark Artisan page have commented saying that they don't like it, it's very situational, and whilst it is, I think it's very fluffy. So obsidian orbs are assault D3, you get D3 shots of course, range 12, strength 10, -3 AP, only a single damage, but you roll to wound against the target's leadership. So of course the leadership 9 you're wounding on 3s, the leadership 5 or less you're wounding on 2s. Of course, there is way to increase your leadership as well. And the reason I think this is fluffy, okay, is because Vect would terrorize his enemies. He'd play with them. And I think rolling a wound against leadership is a lot more fluffy than rolling a wound against toughness. So that's why I've gone for that. Now, the obsidian orbs do have a special rule, which is down at the bottom here. For each wound inflicted on enemy models without the vehicle keyword, Vect regains 1 wound lost earlier in the battle. Now everyone was like, that's too powerful, he's regaining up to 3 wounds a turn. Maybe, but he has a shadow field as standard, which all Archons do, which is a 2-up invulnerable save, which cannot be rerolled for whatever reason. So of course you've got to get through the 2-up, you've got to get then through the 6-up ignore damage, before essentially the obsidian orbs get to their full use capacity. Of course, other than that, you're going to do a maximum of 3 damage against leadership. So you can still do damage against vehicles, but you can't essentially terrorize your opponent and drain their soul to rejuvenate your lost wounds. Coupled, of course, with the character rules, you know, it's situational that this is going to happen. I just thought it was very fluffy. I did obviously give him a shadow field, which Archon wouldn't go into battle without a shadow field. Now, I did have a separate rule for ghost plate armor, which I don't think exists in 8th edition. But basically, Asdrubael Vect never leaves himself defenseless. Vect has a 5-up invulnerable save if his shadow field ever fails. So obviously, Archon, if they do fail their 2-up shadow field, they're essentially reduced to Catalyte armor. Vect would never ever leave himself that vulnerable, and I just think giving him a 5 invulnerable save, if he loses the 2+, you know, it's reasonably fair. I've then given him the Overlord of Comorra rule. Reroll hit rolls and wound rolls of a 1, friendly Cabal and Incubi units within 6. Now, essentially, that is the rule for an Archon anyway, and the rule for I've basically allowed Incubi to be able to do it as well, because he would obviously have Incubi bodyguard, okay? Now, the reason I've gone for Cabal instead of Cabal of the Black Heart is because with him being the Overlord of Comorra, any other Cabal would still do what he says. So I think giving rerolls to additional factions, essentially, kind of like what Guilliman does. Guilliman gives reroll 1s to Imperium units. So obviously, Vect would give reroll 1s to all Cabal units, not just Cabal of the Black Heart, and of course Incubi. In addition, friendly Cabal and Incubi units within 6 can use Vect's leadership. Why not? I think that used to be the old rule for Archons. So, you know what? People say, it's a bit powerful. A couple of people did. A couple of people were like, nah, give them all rerolls and give them for all Cabals. I don't want to break him. I don't want him to be massively powerful. I don't want him to be... Fluff-wise, he's probably on par with Guilliman with his cunning and everything. But game-wise, I don't want him to be as broke as what Guilliman is. So that's why I've only gone for the reroll 1s. We've then got the rule Master Tactician. Asdrubael Vect is so versed in the art of war and pain, he is able to apply his cunning to the battle. If Asdrubael Vect is your warlord, why wouldn't he be? The Agents of Vect stratagem only costs 2 command points. Now, I think that's a nice little buff. 2 command points is cheap, don't get me wrong, but then some people were saying, I get +1 to the roll, so essentially you could never fail. And your opponent always spends the command points on a 5 or a 6. Again, I didn't want to make him too broad. I want to be able to use him. And he's good, but not so good that my opponent doesn't stand a chance. And I've only actually come across one model with a similar rule, and that is Tamarak the Blinded, the Necron Cryptek guy from Forge World. Asdrubael Vect can seize the initiative on the roll of a 5+. Again, it's not massive. It's only +1, so there is, you know, an extra 16% chance that he is going to be going first, because it's fluffy. If Vect knows, you know, an enemy's approaching, he's going to be, you know, on the ball. He's going to be able to turn himself around really quick and jump straight back on it. And then the Labyrinthine Cunning Warlord trait. Roll a d6 each time you or your opponent spends a command point to use a stratagem. I just realised there's a double E in there. You gain 1 command point for each roll of a 6. So it's literally the Labyrinthine Cunning Warlord trait. The Overlord of Comorra is basically the Archon's rule plus Writ of the Living Muse. And then, of course, the Master Tactician. The reason I went for the reroll 1s built in is because he actually had Preferred Enemy in 5th edition, which meant you could reroll 1s to win. Basically, he knew how to dissect his enemies very, very well. So that is Vect, of course. He's got the Eldari, Drukhari, and Cabal of the Black Heart keywords, faction keywords. He also has Character, Archon, and Infantry. So that is it for Vect. Power level 7. In fact, that's not it, sorry. I forgot to mention the Scepter of the Dark City. And I mainly took the same rules here from the 3rd edition codex, I think. So it is Strength Star, AP -3, D3 damage. This weapon always wounds on a 3+ and ignores modifiers to wound. In addition, successful invulnerable saves made against this weapon must be re-rolled. So basically, I've given him a Xenophase Blade that's essentially poison 3+. I don't think it's not ridiculous, but it's good. You know, Dante, the Axe Mortalis, for example, Dante swings at strength 6, possibly 7, and then +1 to wound. So, you know, he can be wounding on 2s. A lot of stuff can wound on 2s. I think the fact that it always wounds on 3s, irrespective of modifiers, And of course, even if you're swinging against knights or even something that is toughness 2 or less, you're always wounded on a 3, no matter what. -3 is decent. Your Terminators, for example, are still going to have the 5-up save. It's a good staff. It's not a broke staff. No mortal wound I put on it though. I didn't want a game to make it too powerful. So that's Vect. Let me know what you think about Vect by himself and if you would use him like this. I figure Vect would probably come in. An Archon kitted out like this is just over 70 points. And of course you can give him the Shadow Field, the Writ of the Living Muse, the Labyrinthine Cunning. Basically, Vect has Obsidian Orbs, Scepter of the Dark City, +1 attack, wound, and leadership, and the -1 command point for Agents of Vect. And it does give rerolls to all Cabals and Incubi. So I reckon about 180 points. That's roughly what I think. But Vect would not be complete without his throne, the Dais of Destruction. Now, a little bit more difficult to do with this one. So what I've done is I've kind of combined a Ravager and a Raider, because in the 3rd edition book it is described as a Raider. I think in the 5th edition one it was described as a Ravager with a transport capacity. So that is what I was going for. So, the Dais of Destruction is a single model equipped with Blade Veins and 3 Dark Lances. Of course, everything is exactly the same as a Dark Lance. Now, I've decided to give it Ballistic Skill 2+, 3+, and 4+ as the degradation, and 12 wounds. I've also given it a flat 3 attacks as opposed to degrading. Dark Lance, Disintegrate Cannon, and Blade Veins as per the standard codex. Of course, it can swap out the Dark Lances with Disintegrate Cannons. So, I did give it Enhanced Night Shields. This model has a 4+ invulnerable save against ranged weapons. Vect would not ride on the Dais of Destruction if it was not protected. So, of course, the +1 to the armor save. I've given it a transport capacity of 5 in addition to Vect. And I'm going to change this one slightly. I think I'm going to say that add another rule on that units can only be embarked on the Dais of Destruction whilst Vect is embarked on it, because I don't want to use it as basically a floating boat for 5 Incubi. But it can only transport Cabal of the Black Heart Infantry or Incubi. Of course, it's got the Hovering and the Explode rules. It can take additional items from the vehicle equipment list, but I've given it a rule, Vessel of Command. Whilst mounted in the Dais of Destruction, Asdrubael Vect still counts as being on the battlefield. All of Vect's auras and abilities still work, but are measured from the hull of the Dais. In addition, if the Dais is ever in combat whilst Vect is on board, he can attack as normal, but cannot be targeted. So essentially, Vect can fight from the back of the Dais of Destruction, much like a Dark Angel Talonmaster. But for example, if the Dais of Destruction was destroyed, Vect can still get out. Obviously, pending the roll of a 1. And I reckon that the Dais of Destruction with 3 Dark Lancers should be around about 190 points. Of course, 175 with the Disintegrated Cannons. The reason I've said that is it's 125 or 140 for a standard Ravager. This has 2 additional wounds. It does have slightly better ballistic skill, and of course Vect can fight from it, as well as the transport capacity, and +1 to the invulnerable save. So essentially Vect and the Dais of Destruction are coming in at 370 points total. To be honest, I think that's quite a reasonable amount. If you look at Gilliman, he is 400 points. I think a little bit less on that is not bad at all. So that is Asdrubael Vect. Let me know what you guys think. What would you change? Do you like the rules? Would you happily play against this? But yeah, that is Asdrubael Vect. So thanks very much for watching, guys, and we will see you again next time.